welcome. I put a link in the in the chat. You can go to it. May have popped up in another box as well. Just keep that URL open. We'll be using it as we go through. But I thought it'd be interesting to see where everybody's coming from. For those of you in the U.S., you're probably just getting back from holiday. So we'll see how many people actually make it back after having Monday off. Today we're going to be talking about secrets of successful sprints. So question for you here. If you go to that URL and paste it in here again, what says you should do sprints? Like why would you be doing sprints? So go to this URL I posted, or you can just go to that there. So go ahead and fill that out, and we'll look at some few things and then come back to that in just a second. So mentioned the holidays. This is what's been keeping us busy, or what we were doing yesterday. We got a new interesting device called a kayak, but it's a little bit different. It folds up. So we fold it up like this and can carry it in different places. It doesn't take up a lot of space. It's just a big sheet of plastic that folds, basically origami folds into a kayak, which is a little bit different. So yesterday, this is my daughter and I went kayaking to she's got a lot of reading as she starts the school year, so we were knocking out some of her books on audio format. So we covered the last 2 chapters of Paradise Lost and 8 chapters of Moby Dick on a kayak trip. And then not to leave my son out, we went back with him and we covered two books from the Iliad. If you look at the back of the canoe or back of the kayak, there's a Bluetooth speaker that we were using to listen to stuff as we went. As a result, last night, after about 6 hours of kayaking, I discovered that my upper body strength of whatever muscles are used in kayaking are not as well developed as they should be. I had a terrible time getting to sleep because it's just aching in my arms. So that was my excitement on holiday. Hopefully you guys all had fun with whatever it was that you were doing. Okay, so coming up here, next week we're going to be talking about the cost of delay. It's a way of thinking about how we should prioritize work and what should come next. I think it's a very useful tool to have in your repertoire for discussing what to work on next. I've seen this really revolutionize teams and organizations that have really started thinking through this because it gives them a way to have a discussion, not just whoever's yelling the loudest to get things done. So if you have any issues, if your organization has any issues with prioritizing or trying to decide what to work on next, or trying to figure out how to, or difficulties trying to do small bits of things and deliver those, this is going to be an interesting talk. So that's coming up next week. And then, let's see, not the week after that, but the week after that, Robert Herbig is going to be talking to us about managing uncertainty. I love this. Can we learn to manage uncertainty? Probably. We're not sure, but we probably can. And then on the 8th of, October, Matt Rabel is going to be talking to us about micro front ends for Java microservices. And I saw him give this talk at KCDC. It was very, very interesting because he basically used a tool to construct microservices and micro front ends in a way that you could work with and play with and see how everything fit together, just all live as part of the talk. So if you're interested in micro front ends or microservices, this will be a very interesting talk to see. What I think you'll get out of it is, from one standpoint, seeing how it works. If you're not a developer, it'll be very interesting to just see how it all works. But if you are a developer, he'll demonstrate a tool that makes it very easy to stand stuff up and kind of see how things work together and get where you can go in and play with it and see how things work and stuff using JHipster. Anyway, I think that's going to be a very interesting talk. And then on the 22nd of October, Eric Lee is going to be talking to us about Deep Racer. So that little remote control car thing is something that Amazon has that they use to teach how to do machine learning. And he's going to be talking to us about the league that's around that, of doing of racing cars, of trying to train a car to navigate as quickly as possible. But a lot of the concepts from machine learning are underneath it. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to this talk. This is going to be something very, very interesting. If you have developers that are interested in AI or machine learning, this might be something that would really pique their interest. Okay, so back to our question. What says you should do sprints? Does Kanban, Scrum, Agile, or UN Resolution 583? Let's see. So most of us are saying it's coming from Scrum. Agile, interestingly enough, does not actually recommend something called sprints. They recommend doing things on shorter timelines, like delivering things to the users frequently. And I think it's helpful to kind of think about that because if we don't know why we're doing so, if we're doing, to be agile, we need to have sprints. If we go back and actually look at the principles, there's principles we want to follow, but none of them say you have to do sprints in 2 weeks iteration. It's talking about trying to deliver things quickly to the customer, to the user. I think that's going to be a helpful thing for us to keep in mind, because if we get too focused on saying agile says sprints, we might end up doing sprints in a way that's not very beneficial to actually delivering for the customer. But what is a sprint anyway? Well, let's look at the definition here. So to run or go at top speed, especially for a short distance. So that's one definition of sprint. But if we go back and look at, I think this is the Oxford English Dictionary, go back and look a little bit further, like go back, what were sprints originally called, used for? And it was a type of snare used for catching birds. So this was like in the 1600s, this was being used to describe a noose. So something like this. Now, this probably looks like something you would see Wile E. Coyote trying to do to catch the roadrunner and then somehow getting caught in it himself. But this idea of it's something that moves very, very quick, very, very short distance to catch something. And if we come a little bit further forward in time, so like more centered around the 1700s, it was a spring or similar device forming part of a mechanism in a lock or knife. So like the thing in a knife that makes it to where it's the spring that you just move over a short distance that lets you open or close it. Or the fastener like on a chest or trunk. Then we come into the 1800s, and it was used to describe a sudden or quick movement or a jump or a start. One of these sentences right here is a guy grabbed a rabbit and she gave a sprint, or she jumped. So still that idea of something short. Then if we come into more the 1900s, it's fast pace of the type used in a sprint race. So one likely to be sustainable only for a brief period. And I think that's an interesting thing to consider when we consider the word sprint. Now we come to, the two pieces of this. It's very fast and very brief is what a sprint usually represents. Now, if we come here and look in the 2000s, we started having the idea of it being a short phase of work with the preset objectives. And this is what most of us are thinking of when we think of a sprint. I think it's useful to kind of think of where that term came from, and is it possible that it might push us toward doing something, the definitions that we have in our mind that predate software, is it possible that those might push us to use sprints in ways that maybe aren't healthy? In this definition, it's a short phase of work trying to meet an objective. So sprints in Scrum, usually it's something that we want to look for taking less than a month. Typically, like a lot of places use 2 weeks for various reasons. It usually has a goal, something you're trying to accomplish, and it should deliver something to the customer, and it's a fixed length. It's not something that's just like our sprint is whenever we finish X, Y, and Z. No, it's 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever the sprint length is. Okay, so these are the secrets of Scrum, or of sprints. And so secret number 1, sprints are valuable because of their, so type in the chat, sprints are valuable because of their what? Type in the chat what you're thinking of. Now, there could be lots of answers here possibly, but there's one specifically that I'm looking for here. They're valuable because of their length, okay. Focus, time box, and goal. Okay, let me give you a hint of the answer that I'm looking for, or that I was thinking of here. These are all great answers. So I'm going to play a video clip that is a hint of what I'm thinking of in this thing of the first secret about why sprints are valuable.
I called the police. What's on your head?
I was looking for the kids.
Where, in a coal mine?
They're in the backyard.
They are?
Diane, I got something real important to tell you. That is the couch from the attic. You can see the marks where Quark chewed the arms. I found it on the floor. It's my thinking couch.
Wayne, are you trying to tell me you did it? It works? The machine works? Do the kids know?
Well, yeah, the kids know.
That's great!
It's not that great.
Why?
I shrunk the kids.
What?
And the Thompson kids, too. They're about this big. They're in the backyard.
What?
Threw them out with the trash.
Okay, so that was my hint here, and so based on that, sprints are valuable because of their what? Buzzword: clout, size, speed, or ability to make people do work. do more work. Okay, so what I was thinking of here was based on their size. The idea of it being speed, we'll talk about in a little bit, because I think speed is a byproduct of sprints letting you focus on small size. But if it becomes the focus, it can be detrimental, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Now, this is just completely side thing. From that video clip of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, does anyone know what this thing is? This is sitting on the counter next to him. Does anyone know what that is? Yes, our kids are in the backyard. Okay, yes, David's got it. This is a modem, a very old modem. I was explaining to my kids how this worked and how we had to use internet by placing phones on these receptacle things, and they thought that was very nice. Anyway, this is a very old style modem. This predates anything that I purchased myself. I had the next generation where you plug stuff in. Matter of fact, I have some old modems in my garage right now that I keep around because a few years ago, somebody called me up and said, Mark, you're the only person I know of in the area that would likely have one of these old modems. I have a printing press and I need people from Sweden to dial into it, and no one has modems anymore. Do you happen to have a modem? And I did have a modem. And he bought me a pizza afterwards. So I keep the modems in case I can get free pizzas from them. Okay, so yes, that is a yes, that Christopher, that's exactly what I've got. I've got two US Robotics 56K, those big black ones. Anyway, that's a modem, completely side thing that's not relevant to this at all. Okay, secret number one: sprints are valuable because of their size. So now here is a quote from Rich Hickey. Rich Hickey invented the closure language, the list style language that runs on the JVM. And this is from a talk he gave called Simple Made Easy, which is a very interesting talk. If you get a chance, you can look up. I think it's on YouTube. I was at this conference back in 2011. It's very, very interesting to hear him talk through what he considers to make things, ways to make things simple. He says, what type of runner can run full speed from the very start of the race? He says, that's right, someone who runs very short distances. But as programmers, we are smarter than that. We just fire the starter pistol again every 100 yards. I don't know why runners haven't figured that out. And his point is the idea of a sprint saying we're going to work really, really fast for 2 weeks. And then when we get to the end of the 2 weeks, we're going to work really, really fast again, may not actually be sustainable. So when we think of sprints, if we get too focused on the speed, I think we may do detrimental things like this. And that's why I want us to think in terms of the short size of a sprint, maybe where we're actually getting our value. What makes it valuable. So this is a, well, I can't remember what it's actually called, and it's Latin. Oh, here it is. There's a name right there. I'm not going to even try to pronounce that, but it's a fruit fly. The reason that this fruit fly is very, very beneficial in doing studies and different things like that is because it's very, very small, but you can use it. Its gestation time, it can have a whole generation in 10 days. So if you want to see what the effects of radiation or something is on organisms with, many, many generations down the line, you can go through 10 generations in only 100 days with the fruit fly. And that small size translates into rapid feedback. And I think that's what we really need to be focused on with sprints is the small size of a sprint is going to give us rapid feedback. And that's the piece that's actually going to be valuable to us. So think about this for a moment. Which would you prefer your team? They figure out how to work 3 times as many hours per week, or they figure out how to deliver something with return on investment in a single sprint by deferring everything that isn't absolutely necessary. So if I see a couple of us are like, if we could get them to work 3 times as many hours per week, that's the ideal. That probably will have some negative side effects, but in your situation, maybe it's a little bit different. But in most situations, just getting people to work, what would that be? 160 hours a week probably won't be a super healthy environment to work in. Especially if they work 3 times as many hours, but still don't deliver anything that's valuable to the customer. We're better off delivering something valuable to the customer than working many, many more hours, even if we're working really, really fast because we're putting in extra time. That might be a lot less valuable in terms of turning dollars into things that the customer really cares about. Okay, so that was secret number 1. Sprints are valuable because they're small size. Secret number 2, longer sprints hide overhead. So imagine this conversation, and this is just made up, but I've this reflects many conversations that I've actually heard. So somebody says, we've had 20 hours of meetings this sprint. So the question is, well, how can we improve? And they said, we want to switch to a 4-week sprint instead of 2. And the logic here is, if it takes 20 hours, we're going to spread it out so maybe we have less hours per week. So the person responds, okay, so we'll average 5 hours of meetings per week instead of 10. And the person suggests this exactly. And then they say, well, what if we do 20-week sprints? Would that be even better? And the person says, well, maybe that seems a little bit long. And then finally, what if we could make infinity length sprints, because 20 hours divided by infinity equals 0. So no meetings whatsoever if we have infinitely long sprints. Okay, that obviously doesn't work out. But if we were to take this, just making infinitely long sprints doesn't necessarily going to get rid of meetings, but we can prove it mathematically, right? If we do try to make our sprints longer like this, what I want to point out is this person is saying we have pain of 20 hours of meetings per sprint. If we just make our sprints longer, it's going to hide this pain instead of actually making it something we can fix. It's going to hide the overhead rather than making it easier where we can fix it. So that's why shorter sprints are generally going to be better. Your ceremonies need to be just what is necessary. Short sprints should make unnecessary overhead more painful, not less painful. Now this sounds counterintuitive, right? The idea that we would want something to be more painful, but the reason that where sprints are working well for people, they're making things more painful that you shouldn't be doing in the first place. So make sure that you're not short-circuiting what sprints provide to you by saying, oh, this seems painful, let's change stuff. It may be pointing to, let's change the way we do our sprints. It may be pointing to things that you shouldn't be doing. Okay, secret number 3. Okay, yes, so this one, I've got another thing. So name something that's inefficient in life. So just think about your experience with life and what's something you've experienced that did not particularly feel efficient. You can type it in the response here, or you type it in the chat. You don't have the poll everywhere. I'll put the link for the poll everywhere. Department of Motor Vehicle. Okay, that's a very good one. That's what grocery shopping. Okay. Social Security Administration. I think it's very interesting that people are thinking of the Department of Motor Vehicle, because that's exactly what I was thinking of here. Okay, so we've got lots of things in life. Hospitals, yes. Lots of things in life that are inefficient in one way or another. Department of Motor Vehicle is the big one that people are experiencing. I've been down to the Department of Motor Vehicle here to help my son get his license, and it's fun being in a small town because you actually know the people that you're working with, but somebody was gone, and so there was this long line and stuff, and they were doing their very best. It wasn't their fault, but it's not an efficient process for the most part. Okay, so how could we magnify the inefficiency of the Department of Motor Vehicle? So imagine for just a second that we are like, there's inefficiencies in the Department of Motor Vehicle. What if we could make the inefficiencies even more painful so we know exactly what we need to fix? So just think about that for a moment. How could we make it worse? Which doesn't sound like what we want to do, but what we want to do is make sure that we're not willing to live with efficiencies. So we want to do something in the Department of Motor Vehicle to make it to where anything that's inefficient will be so painful that it will become very evident we need to change it. What if we replaced all the workers with sloths, right? Slow-moving sloths. It might look something like this.
Well, I was hoping you could run a play for us. We are in a really big hurry.
Sure. What's the plate?
29 T
Number.
29 THD03.
Two. 9.
THD03.
T.
HD03.
H.
D03.
D.
03.
0.
3.
Hey, Flash, want to hear a joke?
No!
Sure.
What do you call a 3-humped camel?
I don't know. What do you call
Three-humped camel.
Three-humped camel.
Pregnant.
Ah. Ah.
Ah, yes, very funny, very funny. Can we please just focus on the text?
Hey.
Wait.
Priscilla.
Oh, no!
Yes? Flash?
What do
No!
you call
A three-humped camel? Pregnant! Okay, great, we got it! Please,
humped?
Okay, so the idea the idea of replacing the workers at the Department of Motor Vehicle with sloths, I think, is a great kind of a way to think about what a sprint is going to do for your team. It's going to show you anything that's inefficient it's going to magnify it, so it will be very, very painful. Now, what you don't want to do, though, is say, oh, we need to just throw out the sprint because it's painful. We need to make the sprint longer. It should point you to inefficiencies that you can actually fix and try to improve. Now, one of the things I want to point out there is he was typing in these things, the plate number, character by character. That might be a place that's inefficient and might be a place that's error prone. And I've had a little bit of a personal experience with that because several years ago, we got a letter from the state of Kansas informing me that there was an arrest warrant out for my wife because she supposedly had been in some county that we had never been at before and was pulled over and didn't have insurance and didn't meet the court date. So there was an arrest warrant out for her. So I'm looking at it like, what in the world happened? And so we talked about it. So I went down to the police station and said, I'm not sure what happened here. It turns out that somebody with the social security number that's 2 letters transposed from my wife's social security number or Kansas license number. I can't remember which it was. Anyway, when the policeman was putting in this person's information, instead of just scanning it off the driver's license, they typed it in somehow and inverted 2 figures. Which created an arrest warrant for my wife instead of the person that had actually was supposed to be arrested. This caused a lot of trouble for us because we didn't want her to drive while this arrest warrant was out there, because if she did happen to get pulled over, they would probably haul her off and then ask questions later about why things got typed in wrong. Anyway, it was a small inefficiency just in the process of things being typed in. In this case of the DMV right there, with the sloth typing stuff in, yes, wrong type. In the case of the sloths typing thing in, that might be a place where it's inefficient. Maybe there would be a better way to get that information in by having the police rabbit type it in instead of having that extra step that just slows things down. Anyway, secret number 3, sprints magnify inefficiencies. If QA testing is inefficient, sprints will make it more painful. That is not a bug of the sprints. That is a feature. That is showing you that you need to change the way you're working to deliver smaller things more rapidly. If it takes too long to get a question answered, sprints will dial that pain all the way up to 11. It's going to be much more painful to work in an environment where you're trying to get something delivered in 2 weeks, and things take 3 weeks to get questions answered. So it will make it more painful, but that's what sprints are designed to do, is to magnify that inefficiency and make it easier to figure out that something's going wrong. If inefficient communication happens between users and developers, sprints should make it unbearable. Now, I know this sounds very unintuitive, but the point is that sprints are going to be designed to push you toward doing things that are more efficient instead of just finding ways to work around the things that are inefficient and make the way you're working less efficient. Now, this can be very, very difficult for organizations to actually embrace, because oftentimes it's much, much easier just to find ways to put a Band-Aid over the inefficiency than it is to actually fix the inefficiency. So I know this is going to sound a little bit unintuitive, the idea that it's going to make things more painful, but it's going to make things more painful that you shouldn't be doing in the first place, or that need to be done in a different way. Sprints magnify inefficiencies so you can change and fix those inefficiencies. That's what sprints should help you do. And by doing it in 2-week increments, or 1 week, whatever you're working with, it will make it more painful, but give you many more opportunities to stop and say, okay, how do we make this better? Last 2 weeks was awful. How do we make the next 2 weeks just a little bit better? Don't break your sprint in order to keep your broken processes. If you've got a bad process or inefficient ways of working, don't mess up your sprint, or don't make the sprints. It's a good way to describe it. You don't want to take away the power of sprints to help you by trying to keep the broken processes. You want to actually change the process that is broken. So here's an example. Our security officer never has time to approve stories within our sprint. Should we make our sprints longer? Are you sure there isn't anything else we can do to help him within our current sprints? Well, we could try to involve him sooner as the story is being discussed. Oh, what if we had him attend the stand-up? It's like, well, let's try that. So the immediate thought, and this is how I think a lot of us think, a lot of organizations especially think this way, is, oh, this was painful, let's make our sprints longer. Instead of saying, well, is there any way to actually fix the root of the problem, instead of just making us feel better about it. Okay, secret number 4. Sprints should not equal fast waterfall. Waterfall is about using a predefined process for the project. Sprints are about continually modifying your processes as you acquire more evidence and doing experiments and trying to make things better. So with waterfall, you plan how you will deliver the entire project and hope that everything goes according to plan, even though everybody knows it's not going to. With sprints, you plan a 2-week experiment to deliver something valuable. So if you think about the way that your robotic vacuum traverses the house, imagine waterfall. And it maps out, and there have been some that there have been early robots that would do this, maps out the entire house and then sends it on its mission to be everything is precisely the way that the plan works. But if a wheel slips, it loses a little bit track of where it is, somebody moves a chair, the plan is completely void, right? It's just sit there and run into a chair or push it off the ledge or whatever it is. But that's not how robotic vacuums work. They continue to work on just a much smaller thing of, oh, I can go forward and clean this trash here. Now, some of them do have kind of an overall plan of how they're going to go back and forth and traverse the house, but they're still adapting as they go. And that's much better way to clean the floor in a changing environment. Okay, secret number 5. So let's ask a question leading into this. What do you think is more likely for your team to do in a sprint? Put the link here one more time. Are they more likely to deliver 10,000 lines of code but nothing delivered to the user? And 10,000 just some large number of code written but nothing delivered to the user. Or are they more likely to deliver a small amount of code and the users within that sprint has a new feature in production from start to end of the sprint? So they start out without the feature in production, they write the feature and get it into production. It's something very small, but the user is using it at the end of the sprint, versus writing massive amounts of code and not delivering anything to the user. And it looks like that most of us are saying that a very small but useful feature in production, which is great, although we may be a little bit self-selecting here, that the people that are interested in how to make sprints work really, really well are the ones that have been working on making their sprints work really, really well. In a lot of organizations, it's much more likely for a team to work for 2 weeks and generate large amounts of code without actually delivering anything to the user at the end of that sprint in production where they can use it. So, secret number 5, sprints drive delivery, not work. Sprints drive delivery, not work. So sprints let you deliver value more frequently, not do work faster. And this is another thing that sounds a little bit unintuitive, because I think we often kind of Agile gets pushed as something to let you deliver more rapidly. And there is some truth in that, but the way that it delivers more rapidly is by delivering smaller things that are better prioritized. We'll talk about this some more with the cost of delay talk next week. But progress is real code being used by real users. And sprints should drive you to make actual progress more frequently. Now, in some ways that sounds like, oh, we're working faster. But oftentimes the idea of doing things more frequently makes it easier for you to be more granular in what you deliver. So you're able to deliver greater value overall. But that doesn't necessarily mean you are just working faster as measured by lines of code or anything like that. If I produce 10,000 lines of code and it has let's say 10 things the user wants and 20 things that they don't really need or don't want right away, and it took me longer to give to them, that probably is that is going to be less agile than I was able to deliver the next most valuable thing to the user. Even if I'm delivering it slower, I'm actually delivering more value. I may be delivering fewer lines of code, but if it's more code that's aligned with exactly what the user needs, that's more value. And that's where I think the idea of going fast, we conflate going fast. If we start talking about speed, developers often start trying to look for ways they can produce more code in less time. And that really obscures the value. It really obscures the focus on value of what does the user need the most as our next increment. I was looking at a project where they had done 130 sprints, but no code had actually been delivered to the user. And these sprints had been done in a way that were very focused on delivering lots of code, but not delivered all the way through. And this is not an unusual thing. I've seen this type of thing happen in a lot of different organizations. It's very easy to get focused on how we're going to deliver something really, really big at the end and lose the focus on how do we deliver the most valuable thing next. How somebody is asking, how is value being defined? For the purposes of this, I'm saying the user can do something they couldn't do before. The user is happier than they were at the beginning of the sprint because they have some functionality that makes their life easier or lets them make more money. Is very simple definition of what I'm using here. So in this case, there was lots of time spent working, but no value delivered. We want to be less concerned about the amount of time spent working or how fast people were working, and much more focused on what was delivered that was valuable to the user. What are the things the user can do in production that they weren't able to do before? Okay, so here's some examples. This was from when I originally wrote this talk, some things we were doing on a project, my company was doing for a project. We delivered thing. Inactive employees needed to stay in the selection dropdown. So they had previously asked for us to make it to where we'd been building this ERP system up for a genetics company. And when they first had some employees leave, they're like, okay, we need those customers to be inactive. So we made them inactive. Well, then they came back and said, you know what, some of those employees that are inactive, we still need to be able to select them because if we need to go back into the past and say who did this, and now they're gone, but we still need to assign it to them. So this was the feature they asked for. Inactive employees need to stay in the selection dropdowns. That was a very, very small feature that they were requesting. But this was something, as a matter of fact, I think that particular thing we turned around overnight. They had asked for it one day, and I think the next day we had it ready for them to test. Very, very small, very, very rapid delivery of a very small thing of value. Another thing, if we could change the person assigned for a schedule, so they were scheduling things, and somebody may be assigned to a slot on a schedule, and we needed to change the person on that slot, but that needed to also update any appointments that were originally made from that schedule. Once again, I think this was something we turned around in a day. This one may have been 2 days, and that was in production for them to use. They wanted to make sure that the people in the system in a particular class would get an email each morning listing all the unresolved issues of here's the things that have been assigned to you that you need to deal with. That was another thing. I think that one took 2 or 3 days. We got it to them, and they were able to start using it. My point here is none of these things are really, really big. They were all delivered completely independently all the way through to the user. If we were focusing on speed, we would probably think in terms of let's do all these things together and deliver it to them, because then we only have to do one deployment and we only have to demo it to them one time. And all these things, if we're focused on speed of just getting things through, will push us away from rapid delivery. And that's why the focus on delivery rather than work becomes very, very important. Okay, secret number 6. Successful sprints grow toward making sprints irrelevant. Okay, now this is my take on it. There may be different ways people look at this, but I'm going to make the case that successful sprints grow toward making sprints irrelevant. So what do I mean like that? Well, stories become more independent to where it's less worried about it being in 2 weeks because you're going to be delivering multiple stories within a week. Deployments start happening on demand. Instead of waiting till the end of 2 weeks and then deploying, if you built your efficiencies for being able to deploy stuff really, really rapidly, the idea of waiting 2 weeks in order to deploy something, if it's done on the first day, probably doesn't make a lot of sense anymore. But the only way it wouldn't make sense is if you built a system that's efficient enough that you can deploy with low cost and low risk. If we're using sprints to improve the way that we're working, ceremonies should become very, very, very efficient. So to the point, the ceremonies may sometimes even be happening on demand, and flow becomes much smoother. So sprints often move, if we're using sprints correctly and continue to improve them, the teams I've seen often move from sprints to a lean Kanban type approach. So stories are flowing all the way through to production. Our focus is on eliminating waste. We're focused on continual improvement. Delivery is independent of ceremony cadence. So we're going to be delivering things through to the user as soon as it's ready and the user can use it, because we've lowered the risk and lowered everything around that. We're not waiting for a ceremony at the end of 2 weeks to deliver stuff. Delivery is independent. Oh, I said that one. And work is fully visualized. So all these things are basically moving from sprint. And I'm not saying like, okay, now we're not doing sprints. There may be some things we still keep as a cadence. But I've been on teams that were still using sprints supposedly, but everything was separated to be very focused on flow, other than just a few things that they wanted to make sure they were doing a ceremony, mostly because it was easier to schedule with external entities to say, we're going to meet every 2 weeks and look at this thing really quick. So for example, the one of the teams I'm thinking about that, they got to where they weren't as focused on having retrospectives every 2 weeks, because retrospectives were happening on demand every day, sometimes multiple times a day, if there was something that needed to be looked at, just very focused on a particular issue. And the team had evolved to the point that that was working well for them. So where do you fall between these two ways of working? So just click somewhere on there. So Scrum and doing sprints, maybe 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever that looks like for you, or more toward the continuous lean Kanban, lean flow. Is that working? Throw this up here again. Oh, you know what? Maybe I'll go to the next one to see it. Okay, I think I messed that one up. Anyway, the point of that slide was just make sure you're thinking about where you fall on that scale. Secret number 7. Okay, how long does a typical experiment last for your team? So how long is it between you try something and then get feedback? Like we've got somebody here down on 2 centuries. Okay. How long is the typical experiment for your team? So it sounds a lot of us are probably doing on the sprint boundary, which is nothing wrong with that. That can be really useful. 2 days, got a few people in 2 years, and at least one person is saying 2 centuries. Well, what if it took 7.5 million years to get feedback? So Douglas Adams is an author who I've enjoyed. He wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So I think that's you can see through it here. That's weird. Okay, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a sci-fi comedy, more or less. And in this comedy, this group of people, or these aliens, pan-dimensional, very smart beings, get together and decide they want to create a computer that they can ask questions of, and they want to ask it, what's the answer to the ultimate question? So the answer to life, the universe, and everything. So in this particular case, here's them coming and asking Deep Thought that question.
Many millions of years ago, a race of hyper-intelligent, pan-dimensional beings got so fed up with the constant bickering about the meaning of life that they commissioned 2 of their brightest and best to design and build a stupendous supercomputer to calculate the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
Oh, pitfalls. We want you to tell us the answer.
The answer to what?
The answer to life, the universe, everything. We'd really like an answer. Something simple.
I have to think about that. Return to this place in exactly 7.5 million years.
Okay, so hopefully your experiments are shorter than that. But if you get to a point where you're trying something and you're not getting rapid feedback, imagine this scene and ask yourselves, are you pushing toward the 7.5 million years, or maybe there's a way to do things a little bit more quickly? So in this situation, at least they'll have the answer to their question, right? We'll take that, and these pan-dimensional, hyper smart beings evidently live a long time, so they'll have to wait, but at least they'll have an answer to their question, right? So everything will be fine. Well, let's look 7.5 million years in the future for them.
Deep thoughts. Do you have
An answer for you? Yes, but you're not going to like it.
It doesn't matter, we must know it.
All right. The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42.
Okay, so they got an answer. It turns out that sometimes the result of an experiment is just showing us we're asking the wrong question, or we don't know what question we should be asking. Now, in this case, what they ended up doing in the story is they realized they didn't have a good question. So they asked Deep Thought to figure out the ultimate question. And so Deep Thought says that she can't calculate it, can't do it, but she can design a computer that will be able to it. And it's going to be this very long-running experiment to figure out the answer, or the ultimate question, to which the answer is 42. And that computer is Earth. So they designed Earth, and Earth was designed just to find out, to run this big experiment, big calculations to figure out what the ultimate question is. Unfortunately, right before it was going to come up with the answer, Earth was destroyed by Vogons in an effort to make an intergalactic highway. So they never did actually get the ultimate question. And they decided to just go with 42 and come up with their own questions with it. Anyway, point is, sometimes the result of an experiment is just to show us that we're asking the wrong question. What sprints help focus teams on doing is running shorter experiments to try to get down to where we're getting feedback more rapidly, to challenge our assumptions sometimes about what we're even experimenting about. Now, there's obviously some things that take longer to run experiments with. If you're trying to figure out things about oak trees, it might take you a lot longer. But we're dealing with software, and usually that's not the case. Deep Thought solution was an even longer experiment, which I bet you've had some developers, been on teams where developers are suggesting even longer experiments or spikes. Sprints create time-boxed experiments in every 2 weeks that they're working. I'm going to skip that one. Okay, so those were the 7 secrets of successful sprints. Hopefully that was useful to you. So now we're going to move to see if people test our recall of things. And the goal of these quizzes is, one, I get to give away stuff, but the other reason is just to make us think about what we've covered. I know for me, the value of listening to something just said, and then the value of just hitting a few questions on it, means I'm going to retain it a lot better. So that's what the purpose of this is. So get ready. Let me put the link here for you. And let's see, we will give away, what do you want to give away? We'll give away I'm going to give away copies of my productivity book. Where is it? I've cleaned up my office since then. Anyway, it's a book about personal productivity. And I've got some of these I want to share. So we'll give away to the winner a copy of Personal Productivity book. It's a collection of everything about ideas on personal productivity, everything from optimal ways to park your car to strategies for organizing your sock drawers and everything in between. And there are some things related to work. Anyway, fun book. Okay, so join that link and we will get started here. Okay, sprints are valuable not because of their blank, but because of their what? Okay, sprints are valuable because of their, not because of their blank, but because of their blank. Not because of their size, but because of their speed. Not because of their height, but because of their width. Not because of their magnitude, but because of their magnificence. Not because of their speed, but because of their size. According to this talk, sprints are valuable not because of their what, but because of their what. Okay, we got 43 people participating. We got over 100 in the on video conference, so go ahead and you can join if you want to still. Yes, sprints are valuable not because of their speed, but because of their size. Now, it looks like a lot of us were still thinking of not because of their size, but because of their speed. Remember, depending on how you're defining speed, we want to think more about doing things small than we do about how fast we go. Because if we're focused on how fast we go, we tend to try to batch things together. And the way we talk about things when we talk about going faster, instead of doing smaller and shorter iterations, the way we talk about it tend to push teams toward trying to defer delivering stuff so more stuff can be done, because then we feel like we're going faster because we did more stuff. Okay, everybody here, we got at 1,000 points. Let's see if we narrow some of these down. The earliest usage of the word sprint refer to a short race, a fast lizard, a small snare for birds, or a way to manage projects. What's the earliest usage of the word sprint refer to which of these things? Short race, fast lizard, small snare for birds, or a way to manage projects? And yes, it's a small snare for birds. Remember, this is the earliest. So it was something that moved a short distance just really fast to catch things. Remember, the Wile E. Coyote style traps was what a sprint originally referred to, or at least what I could find from OED. Okay, we've got, okay, we're narrowing it down some here. And keep in mind, it's very easy to fall out of the top position too. So if you haven't joined yet and you really want to, go ahead. We'd love to have more people participating. Okay, moving on. Short sprints should make unnecessary overhead what? Short sprints should make unnecessary overhead less concerning for management, less noticeable, more painful, less painful, or a super intelligent shade of blue. Short sprints should make unnecessary overhead a super intelligent shade of blue, less painful, more painful, less noticeable, or less concerning for management. What do short sprints do? Yes, short sprints should make unnecessary overhead more painful. And keep in mind, what we're talking about here is sprints will magnify things that you're doing. Remember, like if we replaced all the workers at the Department of Motor Vehicle with sloths, it's going to make anything that's inefficient even more painful. And that's what sprints will do for your processes and the way that you work and for your organization. It's not a bad thing because it will let you focus on the areas that you need to improve, and you'll see it. You'll be hitting it every 2 weeks. There's this really painful process. Whereas if you work in ways that kind of hide those inefficiencies and unnecessary overhead, you might be willing to live with stuff that you absolutely shouldn't be living with. Okay, let's see. The top spot, we've got, I think it's Age, David C, David D, Guest, and Ian V, Jim, Guest 128, Guest 427, and Deb. Next question. According to the talk, sprints should drive what? Should sprints drive delivery, not work? Should sprints drive work, not delivery? Should sprints drive time, not space? Sprints should drive space, not time? Or sprints should drive a hybrid Corvette? According to the talk, what should sprints drive? And yes, sprints should drive delivery, not work. It doesn't really matter how much work we're doing if we're not actually delivering anything. I've been on teams that have worked really, really hard to do lots and lots of work, only to discover that the project gets canceled because they weren't delivering things and kept, they weren't able to inspire confidence with the stakeholders that they were really going to be able to deliver something. So delivery, not work. Okay, we got Guest 939 in the top space, followed by Age Guest 128, David C, David D, Ivan V, Jim PZ, Deb, Guest 424, and Daniel. Okay, according to the talk, sprints with continual improvement often evolve toward what? Do they evolve toward diabolical working conditions, mutant dinosaurs, lean Kanban with continuous flow, organizational nirvana, scaled agile framework, or waterfall? According to this talk, sprints with continual improvement often evolve toward which of these things? And yes, they often evolve toward lean Kanban with continuous flow, is what my experience has been. If people are using sprints effectively and continuing to improve, that's the type of where they're going to be. Now, you could make a case for organizational nirvana because that is a much better place to be in. I don't know. Scaled Agile Framework is an interesting option here. My experience with Scaled Agile Framework is it has lots of really, really good pieces. I haven't seen many organizations where the way it's implemented actually create the desired effect. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but the way it's often implemented and where it gets implemented often kind of push away from actual agility instead of enabling it. Even though when I go through and look at all the pieces of it, I think it's got some really, really awesome stuff in it, and most of it is really, really good stuff all kind of brought together. The actual implementation, most of my places I've seen the actual implementation, though, it pushes organizations to be less agile instead of more. But I'm sure there are exceptions to that. I hope there's exceptions to that. Okay, there's our leaderboard. Next question. According to this talk, sprints remove inefficiencies, make inefficiencies worse, make teams work faster, or 42. According to this talk, sprints remove inefficiencies, sprint make inefficiencies worse, sprints make teams work faster, or 42. And yes, Ian, you may be losing some speed points since it's further away. I should throw some random ones in there just to make up for stuff. Yes, it makes inefficiencies worse. And I think this is a common. I think teams that recognize this will go a long ways toward their agility maturity. Because if we think that sprints are going to remove inefficiencies, we're going to overlook the fact that we need to really be trying to look for. Sprints should make it easier to identify inefficiencies. It's not going to fix it for you on your own. It should make things painful so you can know what needs to be fixed. But it isn't going to just magically fix it. And I think this is one thing. It's very easy for organizations to think we're going to just have everybody do Scrum and that will make everything efficient, but then refuse to change any of the organizational barriers to actually having an agile way of doing software. It's not going to remove efficiencies. It will just make them more painful. And we've got to be very careful to make sure that we're not just trying to find ways to cover up the pain that is showing us that the sprints are working correctly and are pushing us towards saying, this hurts, you need to fix it because it's not working well. And 8% of us think, according to this talk, sprints 42. So yes. Okay, leaderboard. We've got Age. I hope I'm saying that right. Age. Ivan B, Jim P, Lynn F, guest 128, David C, guest 939, David D, Daniel, and guest 427. Okay, what is this device? Is it a Flipper Zero, a modem, a microfiche reader 307, Edison stock ticker, or a telex machine? What is this device? See, we even include a little bit of history in here, right? Okay, what does everybody think? And yes, that's right. It is a modem. It's not a microfiche reader, but it does have the number 307 on it. And okay, this leaderboard, moving on. I think we got this may be the last question or two more questions. Did you find this talk helpful? Okay, now every question here, every answer here is correct. None of them are wrong, so you can choose whatever you want. I just want to throw this in to get some feedback. So choose whichever answer it means the right thing to you. But every answer is correct. 10 more seconds. Did you find this talk helpful? Very helpful, somewhat helpful, or not really helpful? And let's see, I think I may have one more question here. Okay, most of us found it helpful. That's great. 3%, I'm impressed with the 3% that stuck out, didn't find it helpful, and still stuck around to the end. So if you do have any suggestions, though, please feel free to email me. I'd love to hear. Okay, there's the winners. We have top 3 spaces here. I'll tell you what, let's see, second place has, I'll tell you what, if you're in the top 3, so Age, if I'm saying it right, also tell me how to pronounce your name, Ivan V and Jim P, send me an email to the reply. I'll type my email in the chat too, and we will get a copy of this book out to you. Like I said, lots of interesting things on different ways to be more productive, on organizing drawers, to getting more done, tools, paperless offices, and all kinds of related things, and leaps of imagination. I forgot about that one. Anyway, lots of interesting things here I hope you'll enjoy. Just let me know. I will send that to you. Give me your address and we'll get it headed your way. I'm going to give you my email address. I'll tell you what, if you're on this top, take a picture of your leaderboard that shows you won and send it to me. If you don't have a good way of taking screenshots, that's fine. I'll trust you. So, okay, thank you everybody for coming. I'll stick around just a little bit in case anybody has any questions or wants to discuss this. Let me stop my live streaming here.